Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I am going to show you how to connect to our Ubuntu server virtual machine from our host device, that is Windows 11 PC, using SSH. So for that, we will first need to ensure that our Open SSH server is installed and running. So I am currently in my virtual machine, so I will log in with my user. And now the next step is to ensure that we have OpenSSH server installed. So I will try to install the server with sudo apt install OpenSSH-server. I'll enter my password. Okay, it is saying our OpenSSH server is already installed. So during our last installation, so we chose the option to install the server by default. Now we can check if our OpenSSH server is running or not with this command sudo systemctl status SSH. Okay, now it is showing our OpenSSH server is running and port 22. The next step is finding out IP address of the VM. So we can find out the IP address by typing the command IP space A. So you can see there are two network interfaces in here. One of them is the loopback interface with IP address 127.0.0.1, which is commonly referred to as localhost. We don't use this for SSH purpose, and we have the second one, the virtual Ethernet with IP address of 10.0.2.15. So we could use it to do the SSH. So let's try to ping the interface once from our host machine. So I have the Windows terminal open. Now if I try to ping the IP address 10.0.2.15, what happens is we get a timeout. So we cannot seem to connect to the VM through this IP address. To debug why we cannot ping on this IP address, so we will look at the network configuration of the VM. So if I click on the settings and go to network tab, we can see we have an adapter 1 that is connected to our VM with NAT. And if I click on the advanced option, we can see the adapter type and MAC address. So what it is doing is it is creating a virtual network interface and attaching it to our VM, and it is generating a private network inside it. So because of that, we cannot ping to this address. So it is inside our virtual network interface. So for that, what we can do is the concept called port forwarding. Virtualbox provides us with the port forwarding option. So if I click on port forwarding, we can see the port forwarding rules window open. So let's add a rule. So I will name this rule SSH connection. The protocol will be TCP. The guest IP will be the IP address inside our VM, so 10.0.2.15, and the port will be 22. So technically we would use this IP and this port to access into the machine, but since we cannot access this IP address, what we are going to do is whenever we try to send TCP connection, let's say on port 127.0.0.1 on our host machine and on port 22,000, let's say whenever I try to establish a TCP connection, so SSH uses a TCP connection to establish a connection in my host IP and this host port, it will forward all that request into our VM IP and the guest port we have assigned here. So all the request coming in this IP and port will be forwarded to this one. So let's hit an OK and let's save it. Now if I go to the Windows terminal and type SSH, now the username was dev at the rate 127.0.0.1 dash p for port 22,000. Now what it will do is it will try to forward all the requests to inside our VM. So if I hit enter, it should be successfully establishing our SSH connection. So if I click on yes, okay, now it is asking for the password, and if I type the password, okay, now we are inside our VM with SSH. So I'm currently in my Windows terminal and I am accessing the VM. Okay, this was the first way of connecting with SSH. The next way is using what we call the bridge connection. So for that, let's exit for now. I will shut down the machine for now. Um, for that, we have to do some tinkering on the networking part. So let's open the settings. Let's go to the network tab. We can see our existing adapter that is attached to net. Let's go to adapter 2. I will enable this network adapter and it will be attached as a bridge adapter, and this is the list where I have to choose from one of my network devices. So this is my laptop and it has one Wi-Fi card and Ethernet port. I'll be using the Ethernet port because it will be easy to assign IP address, so we don't have to do the Wi-Fi password to set the internet. So I'll be going with the Ethernet port. So let's hit an OK and save this. Now let's start our VM. Okay, let's log in as our user. Now if I try to list the network interfaces with IP space A, you can see the third option has been added, that is the ENP0S8. So this is the bridge adapter that we attach to our VM, but it does not seem to take any IP address. So the reason for that is that VM knows that the network interface has been connected, but it does not know how to connect to the router or how to get the IP address, so which protocol to use. So there are the different methods like DHCP and static. So it does not know how to get the IP address from the router. So what we'll have to do is write a simple configuration to tell it that it should use the IPv4 to request the IP address. So for that, let's go to cd slash etc slash systemd, and if I do ls here, I can see a new folder called network. So cd into network. Now I have to create a new file. I'll give it a name, um, nano. I'll be using nano. Uh, enp0s8 dot network. So I'm going to save the configuration for the enp0s8 interface. So I will give it this name. Let's hit enter and enter our password. Now the content of the configuration file will be as follows. So first part is the match. Okay, hit enter and we'll give the name equals to um, enp0s8. So this was our interface name, network interface name, and let's add a network part and TW network, and the next line is DHCP equals to IPv4. So we are telling that you should use the DHCP to find the IP address, and it should try to use the IPv4 protocol. Okay, now I will save this with Control X and Y and enter to save this file. Let's clear the screen. If I do ls, I can see the file. Uh, Now the next step is to sudo systemctl enable systemd dash network d. Okay, now we have enabled the network daemon. Now I have to start it if it is not started yet. So sudo system network d. Okay. Now let's see our IP network interfaces. Okay, it is still not taking any IP address. So what I will do is I will restart the network D. So with the command sudo systemctl restart system d dash network D. Okay, now let's see again. Sorry, IP space A. Now we can see that the third interface on number 3, we have ENP0S8. It has taken IP address of 192.168.1.70, so it has connected to my router. So now what I can do is, let's open my Windows terminal and let's see IP config. Okay, now one of my, so yeah, we can see one of my Ethernet is connected to my local Wi-Fi network through the router. So it is taking IP of 192.168.1.69 and this one is taking 1.70. So since they are in that same network, if I try to ping the VM from outside, I should be able to ping it. So I will type ping 192.168.1.70. Okay. Okay. Now we are getting a reply. So it means if I try to access it with this IP address, I should be able to access it. So let's try this. SSH dev at the rate 192.168.1.70. Okay, I will hit enter, yes, and let's enter the password. And I'm inside the VM. So let's clear. So this is we managed to access into our VM with the by like using the bridge adapter and connecting the VM to the same network that my host machine is connected to. So this is the second way how we can uh, SSH into our VM. Now with this setup, we can access all the functionalities that will be provided by our VM through this IP address. So let's say if I install a web server inside, from now on I'll run all the commands on my Windows terminal using SSH. So let's try to install the Nginx web server. So sudo apt install Nginx. Okay, let's hit Y and enter. Okay, this is starting the service. Now if I try to access the port 80, now our Nginx should be listening on the port 80. So if I open my Chrome and try to 192.168.1.70, yeah, so I'm getting the Nginx welcome page. So it means now I can access the VM like in the cloud. So with that IP address, I can access into it. I can install anything in here and like access to it via the IP address and etc. So these were the two ways to SSH into VM. So the first one we saw was the NAT, and second one was the bridge adapter. If you do not have the local network connection, you can just use NAT to access the VM. If not, the second approach would be very feasible. So we discussed the two ways for accessing our VM. So one was using the NAT adapter, and the second one was using the bridge adapter. So if you do not have connection to your local network, or you are not connected to any router, so you can use a NAT technique to connect to a VM. And if not, I would recommend using the second option, so it will be much more flexible. We can do a lot of stuff like access the different port services using the IP address. So let's say if we want to host some websites, or let's say a database server, or anything we are hosting in the server and we want to access from the outside, we can like use this IP address to access from the host machine. Okay, that is it for this video. I hope you're able to connect to your VM with SSH just like I did. And if you like the content and want to see more of this in the future, please like and subscribe to my channel. And if you think there is any room for improvement, please drop a comment. Your comment will be very helpful to me. And thank you for watching this video.